Yeah, I'm going to begin, Andy, just by saying, I mean, obviously this sounds like quite a long journey to get Mowgli here to the big screen. You must be sort of very proud, but also quite relieved that it's finally here upon us.
Yeah, that's not wrong. No, it's been a long process. I mean, I started working on it, I think I came on board on 2013. Yeah, so 5 years. It's a long project, and it's been through a real journey. But yeah, I'm really thrilled where it's got to.
Because I mean, one of the things I sort of took out of this, not just that I really enjoyed it, but it's just what a story. I mean, it just reminds us, it's so sort of imaginative and so profound. I mean, you can see why this is a story that's been told. It was sort of before. This is a story that I'm sure will be told again in the future as well.
Absolutely. I mean, all kind of great classic pieces of literature kind of bear repetition or reinvention. And I think the thing about this one was that I'd never really seen a version which actually focused on Mowgli as a central character and actually really followed his journey, his emotional, psychological journey through growing up between these two worlds. So that was really the ambition for it, that it really was a Mowgli-centric story.
Yeah, I'm going to begin just by asking what it sort of feels like. I mean, obviously you've been in sort of a few films already, but I guess that feeling now of seeing yourself on a big screen in a room full of people must be quite surreal for you.
Well, I mean, it is pretty exciting because obviously this was a pretty long process, and being able to finally, bring this to the big screen is really great because, I mean, obviously I did start this back in 2014 when I was just 10 years old, and I was 11 when I shot my principal photography, but I mean, it is good to see it kind of finally come together, and I think the response has been pretty good. So. And
what's it like going back to school after you've made something like this? That must be, because I once scored like a goal in like a football tournament, and I went back like I was a kid.
Yeah, nice.
You've been in movies. I mean, that must be a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I play tennis and soccer as well, but I think going back there, my friends actually, as I said, I've been shooting this for a long time, and a lot of my friends from middle school have come with me through to high school now. So, they've been really supportive the whole way, and I think they're really excited to finally see it now. So,
what an amazing story Kipling wrote. I mean, just how profound and imaginative it is. I mean, there's a reason, isn't it, why this is a film and a story that we've seen told so many times, and we will see told so many times again in the future.
Yeah, it's the central theme of this film is about identity and about how we try to define ourselves, and Mowgli struggles to define himself. And I think that's great for kids to watch on this movie, because most kids from the ages of about 8 to about 15 are always trying to define themselves. They're trying to define themselves in relation to everybody else, which is what Mowgli's doing. He doesn't know where he fits in. I know that was my experience of childhood. And what's great about this film is he learns to transcend his definition of himself, and that's how he solves his problems.
Yeah. And also another theme I thought which was really good to sort of explore in a kind of mainstream and quite accessible piece of entertainment like this is we touched upon briefly how man's kind of ruining the jungle as well, which is quite sort of an undercurrent, but also again it's great. I always find that films like this, we need to explore themes like that, don't we, in movies of this nature, because it's the best way sometimes to present themes like that to audiences is through huge accessible entertainment like this.
Yeah, and it's almost a personification of the jungle, well, a personification of the animals within the jungle. So that's very emotive, and also in many ways a very effective, manipulative way of getting a message across.
And why did you choose Baloo? I'm assuming you probably had the pick of the characters, because you came on obviously before I looked at. So what was it about this particular character that made you think that's the one I'd like to take on in this instance?
I wasn't even intending to be in it because of directing it. I knew the scale and scope of this. I just thought it was the last thing I was going to do was take on a role as well. And then we'd cast every single other role, and Baloo was, for some reason, it was just like the most difficult to cast. And I then thought, well, I think I've got a take on this character. Everybody started turning to me, all the producers, they're sort of saying, well, it's a bit crazy that you're not actually in it. So I went, okay, well, I think I've got a view on how I'd do it, which is making him this sort of tougher, more drill sergeant like Baloo, not a singing hippie.
Yeah, because he was sort of this big cuddly bear when I was growing up. I mean, he's got a bit of grit to him, hasn't he? Baloo?
He has. I mean, it comes from the book. It's absolutely from the book. He's called Iron Paws in the book, and he knocks the cubs into shape because it's all about survival in the jungle, and that's what he really cares about. Is teaching them how to survive.
Because I mean, it is dark, but dark in almost in a way that a sort of David Attenborough documentary would be, in a sense that this is Animal Kingdom. When their animals die and they kill each other and stuff like that. But it is dark, and I'm just wondering, I mean, how important is it to get that across, kind of in interviews or or just to let people know? Because obviously, when you see Mowgli and you hear about the Jungle Book, and it's very easy for people to go, "Oh, I'll take my kids to see that this weekend." But it's actually it's quite a dark undercurrent.
Yeah.
In it,
I mean, I think you can take kids from about the age of 8 or 9. It's not like so dark. It's not a horror film, But there are elements of. I think it's intense. I think the film is intense and it's real, and all the emotions in it are real. So it's Mowgli doesn't just brush himself up and dust himself off and carry on with things when things happen. It's like his journey is of a real child who's trying to work out his place in the world. So it's more the fact that it feels emotionally truthful and real that I think that and it's intense. There's an intensity to it.
So what was it like? Because obviously you're doing an accent in this. How did you how was that? And was there any particular words that you found quite difficult to say in the English accent? And what was your favourite thing to say in the English accent?
I don't know about my favourite things. Actually, the way it worked, actually, I kind of almost suggested this in a way. But we were originally going to do Mowgli in like a kind of colonial Indian accent, kind of because of the times and everything. But I kind of suggested that Mowgli has really had no human interaction. So wouldn't he speak how the animals speak? So I think that's really great, actually, because we hadn't cast anyone at that point, but we ended up casting a lot of British actors and everything. So I think it is really great because, I watched a lot of soccer and everything as well, so that was helpful back home. So, yeah, that was really great.
What team do you support?
I support Chelsea.
Okay, I'm a Spurs fan, so we won't talk about last weekend.
Okay, fine.
So what was this
like? We got pretty thrashed by you guys a couple weeks ago.
I know.
But,
So how was this to film? Assuming did you have to take part in this sort of motion capture?
I had to work. We did a week with about in 2013 with all of us there, and we did a week, and it was great. It was just like giving 100% performance as a wolf, and with a camera on our head, and you can't not commit 100%. You can't rely on the motion capture to kick in and enhance your performance. So it's just as much a discipline as doing a stage performance.
Yeah, because I guess in some ways, Andy Serkis, for example, he's really embraced this obviously new means of storytelling. But this is so sort of far removed, isn't it, making movies like this to what you would have done at drama school? But in some ways, does it almost feel like a slightly different craft in some ways?
Well, it's very similar to what you do in drama school in the sense that when there is a period everybody goes to drama school where you become an animal. You spend 3 months learning to be a fox or a wolf. I did a tortoise, I think. So you do. So in a sense, the beginning sequence of this, the beginning of the process, is very similar to being in drama school, as we're all performing together. It's kind of like a performance troupe.
Yeah. Yeah, but what was it like finding that emotion in the animals? Because obviously with the apes in the Planet of the Apes, the way they move and the way they talk is very similar to us. You can get that nuance, but in this, you've got to try and capture the emotion, I guess, in a tiger who's then got to sort of start talking, which is quite a unique way of kind of putting their face onto screen. I suppose.
That's right. Yeah, that was one thing when I came on board that I was very determined to do, is to not just have a sort of a voice booth voice performance laid on top of a photoreal tiger, because I just knew that wouldn't work. So we designed the animals in a very specific way so they really do reflect the facial expressions of the actors who are playing them.
Mm-hmm. What was this like to film? Because I'm assuming, obviously, the actors were there motion captured, but so much of this required your imagination. You had to really pretend that the whole world around you was really built, when I guess it was just a big set with lots of people in silly outfits.
Well, actually, so the way it kind of worked, I did get to work across from like Christian and Cate and everyone, and the first time I did this was back in 2014, and that was primarily to capture their performance with the head cams and everything, and that was really exciting because I did get to work across from them. It was really great. But with my stuff, like 6 months later, I'd come back and shoot across from different performance capture actors, who obviously played very different from a Christian or whoever. But it was tough to remember how Christian played it while acting across from someone else and keeping my performance organic. But it was. I didn't really have to imagine. I did have to imagine, obviously, that Christian was a panther. But you really see those human emotions through Bagheera and through any of the animals, and I think that was really amazing from an audience perspective as well.
To be fair, Christian Bale is such one of those actors. I'm surprised he didn't turn up to the set as an actual panther.
yeah. He's just so method, and with everything, he just really changes his whole body. It's really great.
And I was wondering too about, obviously, this is a film that would look incredible up on the big screen. But I went out recently with a few friends, and we were talking over dinner about kind of movies we'd seen recently, and almost every single film they were speaking about was one that had been on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I think it was announced today that the Mary Poppins tickets have been on sale like Odeon, and like 40 quid. And this is the most important thing, isn't it, in movies, is that we see films. So I guess
they get an audience. Yeah.
So you must be thrilled that you're involved in a movie that's on Netflix, because in many ways it just means that it's going to be accessible to millions around the world.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that I had a feeling that something like this would happen, because about 4 or 5 years ago, when I started Ray Donovan, I realised that The only movies that were getting releases were movies made under £2 million or made over 250 million. Those middle movies weren't getting a release because it wasn't economically viable to release them and promote them. And now what's happened is that people like Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and all these other delivery systems are now giving an audience and giving a release to these films that would never have got released before. This film would have struggled to come out, although it is coming out within a limited cinema release within the UK and the US. What the great thing about Netflix does is it guarantees an audience. It guarantees an audience for a great piece of work, which is all you could ask for.
Yeah. Because I mean, as in regards to motion capture, I did a motion capture workshop a year or so ago, and it was. You feel like there's lots of people that have studied apes and have learned how to walk like apes, and all these experts that are going to help the actors. But I guess it's not a huge sort of array of people that study how bears move and stuff like that. So what was it like, kind of coming to terms with the movement of these particular animals? Where I guess there was less help from the outside.
That's right, and also, they're more complex in the sense that a lot of them are quadruped animals. They're walking on four legs. You've got wolves, you've got bears, as you say, tigers, panthers. So we were using the performance capture. I mean, it's more of a hybrid, this, because the animation obviously had to come in and take care of a lot of the physicality, especially when the animals are running, for instance. But all of the acting that our great cast did, it's all capturing their facial expressions, but also their physicality, which gave the animators kind of cues as to how their characters would move.
Do you get sort of starstruck? I mean, obviously these people, people like Cate Blanchett, Christian Bale, these are some of the biggest actors ever. I mean, do you ever take a moment just to sort of pinch yourself, or when you're on set, do you have to just forget all of that side of it and just focus on the character?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously I was familiar with all of their previous work. I mean, Batman and everything, but that was really cool. But I sometimes got him to do the voice as well. I was going to ask you. Yeah. But it was really great because I wasn't really intimidated or anything by them. I was just really excited to work with them and really learn from them and everything. And I think they've the level of commitment they just put into their characters is just so amazing and so fantastic. So.
And I mean, one of the film that you're in that I'm sure will get a big cinema release is Hobbs and Shaw. That was really a very good sign. Have you started on that yet? And can you tell us anything about your character, or is it sort of under
Well, I can tell you I've started it and I finished my character. Cool. That's it. That's all I can tell you. Okay. But it was great fun.
Yeah. Because I mean, your career. I mean, it's when you sort of look over your career, it's almost impossible to second guess your next projects. I was wondering, I mean, is that a very deliberate move on your part? Do you always try and pick something different to the last or something a bit different, or is it do you just follow the good stories?
No, it's always something different to the last thing I did. Yeah. And if possible, I always knew that I would never be the kind of actor that you could promote. You would never want Eddie on the film. You know what I mean? Sometimes you want an actor, and if you pay 20 million, you better have that actor on that screen. And they're always that performance. And I always knew that my job wouldn't be that. My job would to be many different people. And so if I can do that and work out what the function of the character is within a piece and do it well, then I'll get work. So my job has always been to be as diverse as possible so that people don't get a fixed idea of me.
Yeah, like in White Boy Rick, that was quite a different sort of character, wasn't it?
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And I've worked with what's the director's name? Jan. I've worked with Jan before in the UK, and then I was doing Ray Donovan in the US, and he asked me to fly to Cleveland to do this stuff on White Boy Rick. I love it.
And I mean, I interviewed Andy this morning as well, and he's just such a nice guy. And he knows. I mean, he's revolutionised in many ways the way we see movies at the moment. What was he like to collaborate on this project with?
Yeah, speaking of collaborating, actually, it was really great because he is a really just a collaborator. He really brings out the best in everyone, just kind of brings everyone together. And he's super open to changes or anything that I have. Like if a line doesn't feel right to me or anything, he's super open to me changing it or whatever to make it feel more comfortable. But I think also he's able to give you that level of freedom that an actor really needs to discover and explore their character. But he's also there to guide you and push you through the character. So I think that's really great.
Yeah. Was there one scene in particular you most enjoyed shooting? What was the biggest challenge, would you say, as well in this movie?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the most challenging scene, emotionally at least, was probably the cage scene with Bagheera, because Mowgli really has to feel that kind of betrayal that Bagheera kind of, really just puts on him, that he's almost abandoning him in a way. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Christian did such a great job in that scene as well, with kind of portraying that betrayal and abandoning Mowgli, as well as really giving that love to Mowgli, I think is really important. But the most physically demanding scene, I think, was probably the running, because that was that was really challenging. I mean, that was a lot of continuous running on all fours, and I did a lot of physical training and agility training for that as well. I had to do push-ups, pull-ups, wind sprints, a lot of agility training, stuff like that. So, yeah.
And my final question is about your future. I mean, obviously, most people. I mean, I'm sort of 30, and I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. But obviously, you're in a stage where you're sort of working at a much younger age than most people start to work. Right. So I'm just wondering about, like, is this what you want to do when you're older? Or have you got, have you already thought 10 years ahead, or are you just sort of taking it all in the moment?
Well, I mean, I try to kind of live in the moment. I don't like think about the past or the future too much. But I mean, you know, I really think that I think you know, I love to continue acting as far as I know so far, but I love to continue acting, and you know, maybe even branch off into directing and writing and producing, you know, while still acting later in life. But I mean, I'd love to do something. Cool. Like that.
Well, good luck with all of it. And sorry about the Spurs.
No, thanks so much. That's all right.
And just my final question is, of course, I mean, this is a film that I'm sure would look fantastic up on the big screen. But at the same time, you know, I went out recently for dinner with a few friends. We all started talking about the new Coen Brothers film, and they'd all seen it. And usually, when I speak about films that are out, none of my friends have seen it because it's so hard to go to the cinema and it's so expensive. Yeah. And I just realised when things are on Netflix now, people do watch it. And I know obviously there's this argument that things should be seen in a cinema, but surely the most important thing as a filmmaker is that people are just watching the movies.
100%. And you know, people, you know, if there is a short limited run in the cinemas of this film, so if they do want to go and see it, and it's the great thing about Netflix is they do want to operate in both spaces. They have a theatrical ambition and they want films to be seen in the cinemas, but equally at the same time, some people don't want to go out. Some people want to watch the films that come out immediately on their screen. You know, the fact that this will be seen in 190 countries on December the 7th is amazing, you know, and I think this film does really work because we spend a lot of time in close up on the animals. I think it really works as a, you know, as a TV film too.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks,
appreciate it. Cheers. Thank you.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey